Good morning, Ken. We're live, brother.
Good morning to you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to round two.
You and me both.
Like I said, man, I think there was some stuff I didn't get to ask you. We ran out of time, and the viewers really liked having you on, man. And again, thanks to Jay Fujimoto, our good friend out there in Hawaii, for putting us together.
Yeah, shouts to Jay.
Yeah, Jay's a good man. Real good man. Let's see here. Let me make sure. We got three folks joining us live. My good friend, Mr. Will Parker, out there in Montana. Will is going to travel with me and my business partner and help us do some training with some federal law enforcement folks up there near your neck of the woods.
Really? Where at?
Well, it's in Jersey, right outside of New York City.
All right.
Yeah. But you're as we discussed when we were in the green room, you're in upstate New York now. You were born and raised in Queens, right?
No, I'm from Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, I'm sorry. Let's see here. John Schreiber is out in Yukon, Oklahoma. He is coin number 1919. Ted Leonard from Mississippi, coin number 1461. Gerald D's out there in Oregon. He is 952. And if you're wondering what all this coin number stuff is about, you've never been on Coffee with Rich, this is what we're talking about, man. This is the challenge coin that unlocks the key to the training vault. I don't know if you saw this, Ken, but speaking of the training vault and giving this type of training to civilians, have you seen this? There's a new bill in the House where they're going to restrict like defensive training to civilians. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, man. So I don't know how that's going to work if this ends up going through for folks like you and I that make our living training people to defend themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's kind of crazy, man.
I know. Tell me about it. It makes no sense. I'm not, and again, when Mike and I mean, this is 10 years, February of this year. It's been 10 years since we started this, but Mike and I started training, Mike Seeklander and I started training civilians together with a company we had called TAC back in 1995. So I didn't just roll out of bed the other day and start doing this shit any more than you did. You know what I'm saying? So 29 years of doing this and keeping folks safer. Now, what you are doing and what I'm doing, I'm not teaching somebody how to ambush somebody in an alley or take down an armored car and get the money. You know what I'm saying? That's not what you and I do.
Right.
We keep people safer. So why the hell would the U.S. government want to stop people like me and you from doing that, Ken?
Yeah, that's crazy to me, especially when you consider the fact. All right, so when we were in the backstage, you had mentioned something about the city. Like, did you just see what happened in the city recently down in New York City with the migrants?
Oh, yeah.
Yo, man. So, and I think what a lot of people don't realize is that, especially individuals coming from other countries, a lot of criminals are trained, man. These guys are coming here and people not expecting them to be trained. You know, you walking around, you just an average civilian, you don't know what the hell is going on. You're a prime target, man.
For
so
real.
You have individuals who are essentially trained to do what they're doing coming over, and now the government is saying that you can't teach people how to, because essentially it's counter ambush. What you and I do is teaching people how to counter ambush, right?
Correct. Yep.
If you can't counter ambush the person, then what happens then?
I don't get it unless they're just trying to create a nation of sheep. I mean, I really don't get it. Like I said, now there's a line where defensive training becomes offensive training, and I understand that, and I'm sure you and I both walk up to that line, but I try not to step over it and teach somebody how to ambush another person. But we do teach all day long how to counter ambush.
Right.
And that's the thing, man. There's a lot of great MMA coaches and fighting coaches and jiu-jitsu coaches, and they will teach you how to fight somebody. That ain't what I'm doing, man. It's a counter assault. Somebody aggressively assaults you, you counter and you win the fight, and that's that.
That's it. That's it.
Dr. Fuller says, if history is any guide, when the government outlaws such training, it goes underground. What do you think about that?
That's the absolute truth. If you find like 52 blocks, for example, right? It was illegal to practice. Guys find a way to do it. You find several arts throughout the world like that. Most indigenous people, usually have a fighting art of their own. When they get colonized or conquered or whatever the case, invaded, that art gets outlawed, and they find a way to hide it in some usually games, dances, and other things to continue the practice and keep the system alive and make sure it's there. So you can never stop. People who want to be free are always going to find a way to maintain their freedom, right?
That's
So you never actually stop that.
Yeah, man, like capoeira in Brazil amongst the
Yeah.
slaves, and like you said, indigenous peoples. When they're and I know Dr. Fuller's been in Afghanistan and stuff like that, so he knows about counterinsurgency. You think the Taliban stopped training because Uncle Sam and a bunch of Marines and stuff like that rolled through the country?
Absolutely not.
Nope. And that was another thing I did. I recently got back from Scotland, and while I was over there, I made a series of videos. I'm going to try to put it all together, and it's basically like, how did Scotland become disarmed, and what are the long-term implications when the British came in and said you can't have weapons, you can't have this, that. You think they stopped training? No, hell, they trained with rocks and stones and sticks and farming equipment, whatever it took.
In point of fact, you remember the movie Braveheart, where William Wallace comes back and he sees Hamish and they're throwing the stones, and Hamish is like, we practice with stones because they don't allow us to have weapons, right? Mm-hmm. There's always a way, man, to keep the thing going, keep the ball rolling. So
I did. So we went to the Culloden battlefield just to take this a smidge further recently, Ken, when we were over there. And Culloden in 1746 is when the British defeated the Scottish Highlanders for the last time and did away with the Highland culture. And what's interesting about that is I had a debate with a history professor who was, because I said that they were disarmed, that the Scots didn't have cannon, they didn't have the stuff they needed to fight. And he's like, oh yeah, they had cannon at Culloden. I'm like, yes, they did have cannon at Culloden. How did they have cannon at Culloden? Because they seized them when they kicked the British ass at Preston Pans and took their cannons and then used them on them. So my point of saying that is, this coercive governmental regimes, man, we seize your armory, we're going to use that shit on you.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah. Troy is on. He is coin number 848 up there in Indiana. Our good friend Will Rhodes is on in Missouri. Thank you to everybody. Tony is on. Please like and hit that share button. Comment if you got a question for Ken. Put it up there this morning. I'll read Ken's amazing bio and then we'll get rolling. Ken Shadow Goodman is the founder and chief combatives coach of 52 VTK. Is a testament to the power of resilience and constant self-improvement. His journey began within the challenging confines of the New York State prison system, where he was a resident for a quarter of a century. Whoa. In this violent subculture, Ken honed his combative skills, intensively refining them for survival. His self-protection system, a product of years of meticulous development, was born and tested within these walls, proving its effectiveness time and again. Ken's introduction to the martial arts world occurred at the age of 5 and set the groundwork for his profound journey. He kickstarted training with fencing in the prison dirty box style, known as 52 blocks or Jailhouse Rock back in the day. Now, Ken, is that still being taught, Jailhouse Rock? Is that around?
Not really. You got like some people out here in the street who teach it, but inside the prison system, a lot of the guys who were like would be considered the grandmasters of the system, a lot of them have passed away. They were very old, so it doesn't really get around like that.
So what Ken is doing nowadays, he's turned adversity into resilience and sharing his experience with the world, reinforcing the importance of self-protection and teaching the skills needed to make it in this world that we live in, man. And I want to thank you again, Ken, for coming on for round 2 with me, man.
Thank you for having me a second time.
Yeah, it's a true honor and privilege, brother. Tell me about New York City, man, because you said your family still live there. You live in upstate now, but I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna be honest, brother. From the rural parts of this country, when I look at what the hell is going on in with regard to crime and chaos in New York City, man, I don't know what to make of it. What do you think?
I think it's getting crazy, right? I know, like, my mom is down there, and I try to convince her to come up to Binghamton. It's first, I'm not going to say it's overpopulated, but what they're doing, just the stuff I see in the news with regards to the immigrant situation, and guys are doing stuff and getting right out of jail for it or whatever the case, right? That's crazy, man. It's crazy. It's becoming a more dangerous place now than it was when I was running the streets in the 80s.
Yeah. And it was it was pretty damn bad back then. But I think what we didn't have back then was like you said, the migrant problem. It adds a whole nother layer of complexity. And the other thing that they have defamed the cops, and so many of them have quit and walked away from the job, that the good people of those communities are not being served by the law enforcement. I don't think. What do you think?
Well, I think that's true to a degree. The other thing, though, is that when I was running the street, right, as bad as we were, we had a level of respect for individuals, families, and stuff like that. Like, you wouldn't see somebody's mother coming up the block and you would continue doing like you was drinking a beer or whatever. You would put the beer in the bag or hide it. You know, there was respect. Your mom would never be a target. This dude's little sister or little brother would never be a target or whatever the case. But that's because we were from the neighborhood. We knew who everybody was. Now you get individuals who come over. They have no connections to the neighborhood. They have no connection to the families in the neighborhoods, anything like that. So everybody's fair game. So that creates a more dangerous situation.
No, I like that point, and it's not something that I would have intuitively thought, but it makes sense. I think that level of respect that you talked about. There was a kid I got just a fight on our street, man, and as soon as I was whipping his ass, but as soon as his mama came out, and he's crying, and I stopped punching him in the face and just let his mama come and get him, and just like block and cover up, like I'm not gonna beat your kid's ass in front of you. Take him out of here. But nowadays, man, it's all fair game.
Unfortunately,
this migrant situation, Ken, what do you make of what's going on the southern border?
I think that's like a powder keg waiting to blow, man. The people in Texas, they're not wrong. It's because if you look at it, that's the front line of this whole situation, man. The people are coming right over, and you never know who's coming over. Yep. And the fact that it would be like me going to somebody else's country, doing something crazy, and when I get out of arrest, they let me right out, right? So now I can do it again to somebody else. I saw one thing with New York City that I think the guy got arrested 3 or 4 times before they decided to ship him back out. And this was like in the course of a couple weeks. He assaulted one person, got out, assaulted somebody else. And it's like, that's crazy. Like I said, my mom is dead, right? So in Texas, I would imagine the situation is amplified times 10 since everybody is coming across right there, right? People have families. They have to have concerns for those families, And what we're seeing now, we're seeing it to this degree because it's becoming more publicized now, but they've been dealing with that for years now.
Yeah.
Right. So they have firsthand experience on the level of violence capable of individuals coming across the border, right? You have the cartels and so on and such like that. Guys are coming across, doing whatever they do, setting up their networks or whatever. Yeah, that's a bad situation, man.
Yeah, I've had on a real good friend of mine. He's a detective, and he's involved in human trafficking. It didn't start out that way. It started out in Vice, and it kind of, once you start looking at prostitution and you digging through the rubble of what is prostitution, it's human sex trafficking. And he sees it with these girls coming through Central and South America, coming to Mexico, coming across the border, and they're being trafficked. They don't know. They're thinking, I'm coming to get a job in a Mexican restaurant. No, you're not. You're going to be a mattress actress until the cartel says your debt is paid, and then it's probably never going to happen. Or the Chinese do the same damn thing. They trap these girls in sex slavery. So your point of, it's not just the violence, right? It's the drugs. It's the sex trafficking. It's the whole thing. And I don't know why this administration seems to have done little or nothing to stop it.
The reality too is that it also works the other way around, right? Because if the same way people are coming in, you can snatch people from over here and send them to. If you take women or children or whoever from over here for the same sex trafficking trade and send them to another country where they have no connections, they don't speak the language, they're pretty much isolated. So they don't know how to get help. They don't know where to go to look for help, right? And if the border is open, that's a two-way door. That goes both ways, man. Right, so the same people that's bringing people into the country for sex work are the same people who can take people out of the country for sex work, right? True. So it's not a good look either way.
No, and Nick is on this morning. He says little to nothing to stop it is by design. It certainly seems that way, doesn't it, Nick? Dr. T.C. Fuller says you have to be impressed that for years New York City had no money for the poor and homeless, but suddenly they have $50 million to simply hand over to illegal immigrants as a pilot program. That's some fiscal wizardry right there, and that must piss you off too as a native of New York City, man. That people in the communities that needed money, that needed stuff to enrich their community. New York City's like, man, I'm broke. And then all of a sudden you pour in tens of thousands of illegals, and suddenly they got enough to give them phones and put them up in hotels.
Yeah, did you see the hotels they're being put up in?
Oh yeah, man.
And then I saw a thing recently, like in the last 2 days or so, that they're giving them debit cards with $10,000 on it. That's insane to me, man. That is insane to me.
Yeah, it is insane, man. It wouldn't makes me wonder, like to Nick's point, it's got to be by design. Why the hell would you put up with this? I just don't understand and of course, we can go back and historically look at the fall of the Roman Empire, right, Ken, and go, hey, man, the Visigoths just poured into Rome and overwhelmed the country, and it destroyed the economy and it did a whole lot of damage. We don't need to get into this morning, but my point is, there's a historical reference for all the shit we're seeing today.
That's true. I mean, this may sound a little bit like conspiracy theory.
I'll go for it, Ken. We put our tinfoil hats on around here sometimes.
So this is how I view the whole situation, right? The way that the government is trying to strip away all the different constitutional rights and everything, they need somebody to back that up, right? Because you have individuals who are like, okay, eventually there comes a point where somebody's going to follow the Constitution. And in the Constitution, it says basically, paraphrasing, that if the government ever becomes a tyranny, you have the right as a people to stand up and replace bring that government down and replace it with another government. And people in power know that, and powerful people usually don't want to surrender their power. So what do? You bring in a foreign army, right? Boom, from somewhere else. All of these people come in the country. Now they are beholden to you because you gave them the citizenship. You gave them the money. They have no ties to the land. Their only tie to the land is the government that allows them to come into the country. So now when the Americans who want to stand on their freedoms say we had enough, you have these people. They can be armed by the government, supported by the government, funded by the government, and the government says, all right, I need you to get these people out of here, and they don't have a problem with that. It becomes a thing. You want to stay here as a citizen? This person is standing in the way of your citizenship. We need you to put squash this rebellion. And I don't really want to use rebellion like that because I know that's a whole nother thing right there. But we need to set this down, and we need you to do it. And if you can do this successfully, you can stay in this country as a citizen. That's, again, that may be some conspiracy theory stuff, but I kind of see that happening, or that's a possibility at the very least.
What's funny, Ken, is, you and I come from very different walks of life. All right. You're from the North and the city. I'm from the South and the rural community. I was a cop and a Marine. You spent a quarter of a century of your life behind bars, and yet we come to the same damn conclusions. You know what I'm saying? I 100% agree with you. Everything you said, and Will Parker adds on to your comments. He said, and a duty to do so, stand up to the tyrannical government. And I think that's also interesting. It's not just a right that we have as a free citizenry, but we have a duty to stand up to that tyranny. Let's see here. Let's got some comments coming in. Bruce is on. Says, good morning, gentlemen. Coin number 481 from Michigan. Good morning, Bruce. Gerald says, the minute we stand up, we would be arrested as insurrectionists. I'm going to talk about that, Gerald, because you got a great point, and you're absolutely right. Tony says, and Biden had to try a piss poor attempt to interrupt Tucker's interview of Putin last night. Yeah. Dr. Fuller says, to Shadow's point, making illegal recently arrived aliens police would feed right into his point. And guess what they're doing? They're doing that. LAPD just graduated its first set of police officers that are illegal immigrants. And if that doesn't blow your mind, then you're not paying attention. And I know you are, but I'm just saying, people listening, man, you need to hear what's going on.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's all the way insane. The thing is this, right? So there may be a way to do it, but how did you do a background check on these people? So you don't know if these guys are criminals in their own country, right? They come over here, but you get an individual who, let's say he committed a crime in this country. He just wanted to change his life around, right? And he decided, I wanted to be. He couldn't do that. He couldn't be a cop, right? Boom. But this is somebody who has, again, ties to the. That means a lot, right? That the social contract, all of that. You live in this country. You were born in this country. You everything from this country. Let's say you made a mistake. You decide I want to turn it around. Like, all right, so dig it, right? I remember when 9/11 happened. And I was in the box when it happened. I got out the box. I went to Comstock. And there were guys who were writing to the government, like volunteering, I want to go defend the country. This is in prison. There were guys in prison who were like, I want to go defend the country. I don't like what happened. Send me over there. And they were being denied that, right? Well, you're a violent felon. You can't, whatever. But now, again, these dudes want to defend the country. These guys are not even from here, and you let them come over here, and you're gonna have them police, and you don't know who they are, what they've done, nothing about them. That's insane to me, man.
It is absolutely insanity. But because they don't keep it. Ain't like if I'm born in Guatemala or I'm born in some village in China or name the place, right? Because they've caught like 30,000 Uzbekistanians. You think some little rural community in Uzbekistan has a way to track births in a mud hut? Hell no. So I'm come to the Border Patrol. I'm whoever. So to your point, Ken, it's like, how are you doing a background check on me, brother? There's no. I'll give you a case in point. My grandfather, Ralph Brown, whose house I live in, just passed away in 2010 at almost 90 years old. That dude was born in a cabin. The state didn't know he existed until he filed that he had been born in the 60s in order to get a Social Security card. He was off the grid, man. Nobody knew this dude was alive. He couldn't read or write or nothing. And that's just 2 generations ago. Now project that into a third world country, and then he comes over here and goes, hey, man, he can be whoever. And you don't know that this dude's a cartel killer. And now you're going to give him a badge and a gun and let him police me and you? That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm telling you. It's like I said, I got a whole bunch of theories going around, bouncing around in my head up here, man. And I pray that most of them are wrong, right? But this is not going to end well, right? Unless something changes in the next, I don't know, maybe it might be too late for things to change, right? But yeah, this is not going to end well.
No, and I want to go back to Gerald's point here. And I know we're a self-defense podcast, and I know we're going far afield this morning, but I really enjoy talking with you, Ken. You got a good head on your shoulders, man, and it's always a pleasure. But I want to go to Gerald's comment here. It says, the minute we stand up, we would be arrested as insurrectionists. And to his point, I'm putting together, I think it was last week, Dr. Fuller and I talked about the Revolutionary War and how some of the things that led us to break our ties with Great Britain are alive and well today with regard to our own government. So I was digging into some stuff about the Civil War recently, Ken, and I came across this thing where when Sherman was burning his way to the sea, burning his way through Atlanta, all these women were working, the 400 and something women were working at this Roswell knitting mill. Their husbands were all off fighting in the war. They're all by themselves. Some children were working in the mill because, back then kids could work in those kind of places. So Sherman comes in. Now, these are Americans, right? And he arrests them all for working in the knitting mill because some of the cloth was being used for the Confederates. Puts them on a cattle car and ships them off, charges them with treason, right? This is punishable by death. Puts them in a cattle car, sends them off to Marietta, Georgia, where they're raped by a bunch of Union soldiers and then deposited in Indiana prisons. And nobody knows what even happened to these poor old people. So you think that won't happen again? The minute you take up arms against this tyrannical government, I'm not going to say this one is yet, okay? I don't have my tinfoil hat on messing up my beautiful hair this morning, but you know what I'm saying? It has happened and it can happen again.
I agree 110%, man. If we're honest, to some degrees, it is happening right now, right?
Yep.
You look at some stuff, like you speak out against some things, like Biden recently was giving a talk somewhere, and some people like shouted him down. They got boosted right out of there, right? So what happened to free speech, right? They start, things usually start small, right? Because if you do too much at once, the people realize what's going on, and there's the risk of them not wanting to go for it. So you take small things, right? You take the First Amendment, you take the Second Amendment, you take all these things, but you do it in a way that it doesn't really seem like you're taking it. We're just going to suspend free speech for some people, not everybody, right? And then eventually it goes over to being for everybody. We're going to suspend gun rights for some people, not everybody, right? And then, all right, the people who still have gun rights, we're going to dictate you can only have this, right? And then once from there, as a matter of fact, just give us everything, right? And what would be the point of taking people's guns? Right? I'm not a gun owner, just put that out there. So whoever, if the satellite might be watching us.
Oh, it's watching, brother. Don't make
But
no mistake.
what would be the point of taking people's guns unless you plan you wanted to disarm the people for a reason, right? Come on, man. Nothing. I don't believe anything happens by chance, right? There's always a reason for something. So if you take the guns, the people can't defend themselves. So now if a tyrannical government comes in and they start pointing guns at you and you don't have a gun to point back, makes it less likely that you'll resist whatever it is they're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Just putting that out there.
No, you're 100% right. Tony says, what a week, man. Has anyone seen Hawaii's Supreme Court decision about the Second Amendment? And I don't know if you saw that because it just came in, I think, last night. But basically, the Supreme Court of the state of Hawaii said that they don't have to recognize the Second Amendment to the Constitution. And I'm just like, that's how you we just become 50 states and not the United States when you have states that go, yeah, I don't care. I'm not going to do that. Because the danger is, of course, what happens next? You say the Fourth Amendment didn't apply here.
Right.
You can be illegally searched and seized anytime that state feels like they want to do that.
Yeah, we're having cruel and unusual punishment. That no longer is a thing either, right? Everything just starts to go out the window bit by bit. And also, when you allow like individual, I mean, there has to be some room, right, for interpretation. But when you allow gross misinterpretation of the different articles in the Constitution, now anybody can say anything. Well, I don't like this particular part, so we're going to take this out. And whatever reason that the amendment was put in there to defend, now that goes out the window, right? So now what if they say, all right, you know what? We're going to bring back slavery. We don't like this part of the Constitution that says slavery can't be a thing, so we're going to bring that back. That does no longer applies here, right? Or the part of the anything somebody wants to say, they can, if you leave it like that, if you make it possible for people to just interpret the Constitution however they want to interpret it.
Oh man, I 100% agree with you, and that's the stuff that scares the shit out of me. And I just lay it in bed at night, tossing it around, because I'm 54, man. This is not the country I want to leave for my kids and grandkids. You know what I mean? Nick says, we are law-abiding, same sober citizens. Register our firearms so when they want your CCW, they know exactly where to come to take it. Generation or two. Let's see here. There will be many good people, unarmed, bad people, and the police will have them. Yeah, Gregory is on Super Fire, brother. Tony says, how the Third Amendment, no one even knows what it is. Yeah, we talked about the Third Amendment the other day, and there's a reason why it is the Third Amendment. Let's see here. What are the comments we got? Let's see. Lots of good comments coming in this morning. Appreciate it. Keep them coming, guys. Please like and hit that share button. We're kind of, Ken and I are, before we get into the more of the self-defense stuff, kind of talking about the state of the union, man. Some of the things that are really troubling to anybody that's paying attention. We talked about the southern border and some of the challenges there. And I think you're right, because everybody's like, it's a Texas problem. No, it's not, man. It's a problem coming to you. And you got to see it that way. Let's see here. Dr. Fuller says the further balkanization of the country. Thanks, Hawaii states are increasingly going their own way on immigration, firearms, and drugs. What's next? And how far down these roads are we going? A nation of laws? Not so much these days. And I want to get to your point. So, because your point was somebody's in there, Biden's giving a talk, and they're trying, as an American citizen, trying to exercise their freedom of speech, their First Amendment rights, not the 27th Amendment, the first one. The founders made it the first one because they knew it was so important. And somebody snatches him up and pulls him out.
Right.
And it's like, okay, you just infringed on my First Amendment rights. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just trying to let my voice be heard. I'm peaceably assembling. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not breaking stuff. And you're dragging me out. And you say, well, my First Amendment rights have been violated. Okay, we're a nation of laws. Sue me. who has deep pockets to sue the government, Ken?
Right. That's the whole thing. The reality, though, is that it shouldn't come to that. The government is supposed to be there to like, defend the Constitution and interpret the Constitution, apply the Constitution. They are supposed to be the example of what the implementation of the Constitution is. They set the example, attitude reflect leadership. They are supposed to set the attitude and let it trickle down. Doing stuff like that, you're showing people that it's okay to violate, other people's rights, which isn't cool, right? And to another point you made, as far as like with the Texas thing, right? If people say it's a Texas problem, if you look at, you have brought up the Roman Empire before, right? And when they were going to war with the, I think it was the Gauls, at one point, right, they had pretty much control of things. But what happens is you allow one tribe to come in, and as the one tribe comes in and you think the tribe is cool, boom, they start to influence that tribe. And it becomes a thing where they start to replace it. Actually, Shaka Zulu used to do this all the time. I'm not sure if you're familiar with his strategy, but you come into a village, right, and you conquer that village, right, boom, and then you take the military from that village and push them somewhere else and leave your military there to occupy, right, and you continue pushing forward like this. Now, immigration could be a form of invasion because we know that migration affects social patterns, right? It will affect voting. It will affect a whole bunch of stuff because whoever has the majority of votes, they can dictate policy. So now if you get a group of people, a large enough group of people, they come into Texas, right? And they start to push the Texans out and replace them with themselves, then they can dictate what or influence policy in Texas. And then those individuals, they have more people, their families come in and they push further north and they start to spread out and it becomes a thing, right? And, so like it's an everybody problem because even though things seem small in the beginning, small things usually become big things, man. And by the time it becomes a big thing and people realize, if I should have paid attention, it's too late. Right now, you're trying to catch up. You're behind the curve, right? Like what we say in the self-defense community about being behind time, right? You don't want to be behind time because now you're playing catch up. That means the other person beat you to the punch, man. That's a bad position to be in.
Yeah, and of course you're absolutely right. And I've had on here the guys from Arcadia Cognerati who created the left of bang concept. Like you have the explosion, you have everything happening after the explosion will be right of bang, and then you have left of bang, all the things that you should be doing before that ever happens to you. So, to Ken's point, we're getting closer and closer to that line, and really at this point, it's almost like I think that migration bomb has already blown the hell up. I mean, what do you do now? You've got tens of millions of people in this country illegally. Okay. I'm all about legal immigration. I'm sure you probably are too, Ken, but we need to have, we need to have people that come in this country the right way and want to be here for the right reasons. But when you come into this country already breaking the damn law, I got no use for that.
Yeah, that's just.
And Tony's point here says, anyone watch the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court about Trump yesterday? And it's Trump v. Anderson out of Colorado trying to keep the 45th president off of the ballot. What do you think about that? Do you have any thoughts on that, Ken?
Kind of like, so I like Trump, right? There are a lot of things that he said that I don't particularly care for, but I feel like he's more honest because at least he says exactly what he's thinking, right? See, I'd rather deal with somebody. I tell people I'd rather get shot in the face than in the back, right? So if I got to deal with an individual, I'd rather be able to know exactly who I'm dealing with than to have somebody make me a bunch of BS promises and then do some other stuff once they get. Nah, let me know who you are so that I know who I'm voting for, right? And Trump he lets you know who he is, man. Like, this is who I am. Like it, dislike it, I don't care. Boom, this is me, right? And I believe that a lot of people don't want him on the ballot because of the way he is, right? Not about the arrogance or whatever, but because he's his own man, right? Yeah. You can't buy the guy, right? You're not gonna bully the guy, right? I told somebody the thing with Trump is that he's got the rich man attitude and the New Yorker attitude, and that's a bad combination right there because New Yorkers don't like to be told what to do. So, Trump is going to be his own man, and if you try to bully him, then he's just going to push back against that, right? He'll probably do the very thing that you're telling him not to do just to spite you, right?
Exactly.
So,
and he's got the money, to back it up.
Right, that's the thing. See, so I saw a thing on social media recently. They was talking about, I think it might have been the last 6 or 7 presidents, how much money they had when they went into office and how much they left office with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody became extraordinarily richer, right, during their time in office, except Trump. He's the only one who lost money while he was in office, right? That says a lot right there, man. True. Right? It lets you know who's being bought and paid for and who can't be bought or paid for, right? So I'd rather have an individual in office who can't be bought and paid for, right, than somebody that if you throw some money at him, then, his decision, his policy swings on whatever way the money is coming from. That's a dangerous thing right there.
Oh, hell yeah. Because what it takes to run, there's no way Rich Brown or Ken Goodman can run for president, because it takes, hundreds of millions of dollars to run for freaking president. That's a rich man's game. So if he's like, hey, man, I don't need your freaking money, I'll finance myself. Now, I'm with you, brother. I don't think that is Trump the perfect. Hell no, nobody is. And people say, well, I don't agree with some of the stuff he said on social media. Hell, I don't agree with some of the stuff my wife and kids have said on social media. You know what I'm saying? I mean, let's just be honest. You know what I'm saying? And I love them dearly, but some of the stuff they do, and they're like, I don't know what you think. I don't know what you're thinking. But my point is if you look at the tail of the tape, what he accomplished, and then what has happened under the 46th president, current sitting president, man, it's a pretty damn easy decision. And I like your point. You know where you stand with him, because he tells it like it is, whether you want to hear it or not, right? And we didn't get any freaking stupid wars under him, which is what another thing I love. He kept the bullies in check because he's a freaking bully himself, or that's my opinion, Ken.
I agree with that. I agree, but so it takes a bully to keep a bully in check, right? You can't be the passive person and keep the bully in check. You're just going to get bullied, right? And Trump is that guy. That whole thing with the Abraham Accords, that was him, even though Biden's administration tried to take credit for it. But under them, the Abraham Accords is going to shit. Yep. Right? Oh, I'm cursed. That's cool.
No, you're good. You're good, brother.
Everybody thought that the world was going to break out into World War III under Trump. It didn't, right? But now it looks like we may be on the brink of World War III under Biden. So this, for everything people said about the man, right? He didn't have us in the situation that we're in right now, right? And people can't even say with an honest face that he had us going in that direction, because he really didn't, man.
No, right? And you know what? I think I'm hoping that the black community in America is finally seeing through some of the bullshit that the Democrats have done to them. I really do. And I think some of them are waking up, because, Trump's the first president in American history, including Barack Obama, who doesn't descend from slave owners. And, another thing, Trump gets a bad rap for, and again, I'm not a Trump apologist, guys. I'm just telling you what it is. I'm just telling you the way it is. Yeah, Trump's mama came over here from Scotland. Hell, she didn't even speak English. She only spoke Scots Gaelic. Two of his wives are immigrants. So I don't know why Trump didn't say, like, look, I'm not against immigration. My mama immigrated here. My grandfather came here from Germany. My wives are all immigrants. I just want legal immigration. Let's build a wall so we can stop the traffickers coming in, and anybody that wants to will get on the bridge and come in here and try to come in here legally.
Right.
Man. Nick says, this year tells the tape. How is it possible old Joe can win again? Are we seriously fool me once, but twice most voters in history? Yeah, I don't get it. Craig Holland over there in the United Kingdom, he says he doesn't lie. He just can't remember what he said. LOL. And to your point, man, Tony says, Trump donated his salary. I think he makes like $400,000 a year is what the presidential salary. And look at Obama. And I know he wrote 2 great books, Dreams of My Father and Audacity of Hope. And maybe there's a third one out there. I don't remember. So he got pretty rich off his book sales, but he didn't go from a guy who's worth $1 million to worth $100 million or whatever he is off a $400,000 salary. Yeah, and I'm not just talking about him. You look at Nancy Pelosi. She's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And How's that possible?
Man, you know how.
I mean, it makes you think, like, who's the biggest criminal here? You know what I mean?
That's the thing, man. Like, there's so much stuff. Like, these people, they get into these offices, right? They're supposed to go in there to help the people. They get in there and all they do is help themselves. They sell their votes to whoever the biggest bidder is, whether it's big pharma, whether it's the tech companies, whether it's the arms companies. And they have life insurance, health insurance, all of this stuff for free off the taxpayers' back, right? For life. They don't ever have to worry about paying health insurance again. The taxpayers will pay for that, right? A lot of them have security for the rest of their lives coming from the taxpayers, right? Everything. Their kids get free college. We got kids going to school, man. So you tell kids, go to school, get an education, you get a good job, right? All right, cool. These kids go to school, they put themselves in debt to go to college, they come out of college, and that is struggling to try to live life and pay off this student loan. But the children of these politicians get to go to school for free, right? On the taxpayers' back. So the taxpayers are putting all of this money into this. It's supposed to be reciprocal, right? Yep. We put the money into the system, and then the system uses that money to help the people of the country, right? I don't see that. Let's look at what they do with veterans, man. See, all right, going back to the Roman Empire, right? If you served in the Roman legions, once you finished your term, you got Roman citizenship, right? They took care of you. They gave you a plot of land. You got Roman citizenship, all that stuff. Yo, I hate the way they treat veterans in this country, man. I hate the way they treat veterans. They send you over wherever, right? Dudes go there. They go there because of their love for the country, their loyalty to the country. They get shot up, blown up, or whatever, right? PTSD. They come back here, and then they have to fight against the very system that sent them over to get basic things, man. Basic medical attention, basic psychological care. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy, man. These are the people who put their lives on the line for the country to defend the freedoms that you say you represent, and then they come back here and they get a handshake and a pat on the back, and that's it. They got to struggle for everything else. That's disgusting.
It is, man. And to your point, you look at veteran suicides as an indicator of that, homeless veterans as an indicator of that. There's a whole lot of indicators that prove your point on that one, Ken. And it is. And to Nick's point here, it says how you treat the poor, your veterans, the disabled, and the elderly tells you much about your country. And he ain't wrong. Craig says from our side of the pond, of course, he's in England, we remember him sorting out North Korea. I didn't think Ukraine and Palestine would have happened if he was in power. Yeah, I mean, the first president to go to North Korea, shake his hand and Kim Jong-un's hand and walk in. He got Rocket Man, stop missile testing. As soon as the new administration got in there, what happens? He goes back to launching missiles again. Ted says the number of veterans is a rapidly diminishing demographic, has to have an impact. Dr. Fuller says retired veterans these days have to do bi-weekly podcasts just to make ends meet. Yeah. Yes, they do. And that's fine, man, because I think that, evil thrives when good men don't speak. And that's why I enjoy our conversations, Ken.
Me too, brother. Me too.
Ted says some write award-winning books. Oh, yes, they do. Like Dr. Fuller's book, No Safe Alternative, or Painting Over Rust, a 20-year odyssey. And of course, that's the same Dr. Fuller that's on this morning, wrote those two amazing books. Or you can pick up my award-winning memoir on violence and varietals. Yeah, man. Since we're talking about all this and we're on a roll here, man, when you look at the things that are confronting our nation, and me and you and our families that are in this nation, right? Not just the country, but the people in the country, me, you, everybody watching, listening, our friends and families, what concerns you the most, Ken? Is it the rise of China, the destruction of the dollar, economic problems, foreign wars? Any foreign war, there's a plethora of them right now to choose from. My God, man. Or internal conflict, the border, the election. What bothers you the most, man?
Honestly, all of the above, right? Because all of these things really aren't compartmentalized. Each
True.
one of these affects the other thing. What's going on in whatever foreign war is directly affecting what's taking place here in America, the economy, the whole BRICS nation thing, that was bound to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
America had a position on the world stage, and instead of being a little bit more Machiavellian with it,
Mm-hmm.
America kind of bullied their way through everything, and people resent being bullied, right? So it's only a matter of time before people stand up to a bully, right? So that creates the situation where, if I'm the big man on the yard, and then I got two other dudes coming to the yard, and they're just as big as me, everybody that I've been bullying starts to go over to those people, right? So now the other two big bullies on the yard, or big men on the yard, are China and Russia, right? So now everybody who had a thing against America is like, okay, cool. These dudes are just as powerful as America. Let's go over here. So the BRICS nation was bound to happen, right?
Yep.
Now that it's happening, you would think that the individuals in power, right, will find a way to shore up the country. They're not. I saw a video the other day. They have this game. Are you familiar with Pokemon Go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All right. They have a game in China that's like a militarized Pokemon Go, right? They have these little, look like little submachine guns, and they have their cell phones connected to it, and they got to scan these bars. But essentially, the kids are learning urban warfare, right? But it's a game, right? It's a game. Right, but they're learning urban warfare. They're going through the streets. They're learning how to provide cover for each other and shoot them. All of this stuff, right? So I see stuff like that. You look at the kids in Russia. These kids are fit. China, the kids are fit. In America, government, because they've been bought out by all of these big companies. We have. I saw a thing recently. They were saying that doctors never used to see kids with like diabetes and stuff like that. Kids are obese, they're diabetic. We don't encourage our kids to go out and exercise or anything, right? So we have probably the most out of shape population, or one of the most out of shape populations in the world. But we're poking at these two countries that are teaching their kids from young to wage urban warfare. Like that's insane to me, right? All of these things, in what that has to do with the borders, right? So now if the borders are open, people can come in through the border. You don't know. Listen, right? If I was a foreign agent, right, and I came in through the border, all I have to do is find like-minded individuals and begin training them. Now I was trained wherever, right? I come over, I find like-minded individuals, start training them, or a bunch of us come over. Remember, the borders have been a problem for a long time.
Yeah.
Right. So it could have been you send people in waves, right? Because if you send too many people at once, other people start to notice. So you send 10 people this week, 20 people next month, boom, boom, boom. And they start to develop cells, right? And then these cells become self-contained. They train, they in communication with each other, and boom, right? So now you have the cells already here. They understand the American structure. They understand the infrastructure, what targets are weak, what targets aren't, so on and such, boom. So when these other people come over, right, to actually do the actual invasion, there's already an army in place. Now that's dangerous, right? And again, internal policy affects that, right?
Yes.
That's the result of internal, because if the internal policy didn't have the border wide open, it wouldn't create there's always an opportunity for people to get into the country, right? But not on that level, not on that scale. So all of these things are interconnected. And where the people sit on the issue is going to be depending on how they feel about the government, right? Nobody wants to die for a government that showed them it doesn't care about them, right? That's the reality of the situation, right? You can't tell me for years that you don't care about any of my needs or anything like that. Could you imagine, right? And this is the sad part, and I'm gonna circle back to that.
Mm-hmm.
Something big happening like that, some invasion or some foreign power has sleeper cells here and they rise up in the American government, because from what I understand, the military is not as big as it was before, right? They try to tap the veterans in the country on the shoulder, the retired vets and so on and such. And the guys are like, why should I fight for you when you just didn't give a fuck about me, right?
Right.
But the part of that that's sad is that most veterans would still fight. right? Because of the love for the country, right? Like I tell people, I've never been a veteran, right? But I've been telling people, I love America. I don't particularly care for the government, right?
Yes. Yep.
This is my country, right? I'm not from anywhere else. I'm from right here. So I love this country. I love the potential of the country, right? I don't particularly care for the government. So yeah, I probably just got myself in trouble. They're gonna kick my door in later, but
you know, what's funny, man, is I'm looking at this list of folks that are on right now, thinking of the 13 watching us live, and I think, oh, a good 80% of them are, retired or they're either cops, former cops, military dudes, or retired military dudes. And we all feel, and I'm going to speak for everybody. I'll speak for Rich Brown. I agree with you 100%, man. I love this country, and I love what you said. The potential of this country. Has this country ever lived up to its potential? Hell no, probably not. We've made a lot of mistakes. You know what I'm saying? But the potential for greatness has always been there because we're a republic. E pluribus unum, man. I say it all the time. From many, one, and that's the bifurcation of this country, where you got people trying to pull people into different groups. This idea of identity politics is insane.
yeah.
Like, because it tears families apart too. It's like, women only need to be looking out for women's interests, and men only need to be looking out for men's interests, and Asians only need to be looking out for Asians' interests, and all this other crap. It's like, that's not what the dream of this country was. And it's not people, Dr. King, that was never his, you judge a man by the content of his character, not the color of his skin. And now it's like, no. In 2024, we want to judge people by the color of their skin. I'm like, how did we get here? And more to the point, how do we fix it?
Ooh, I got an answer, but it's dangerous.
Oh, yeah. I fear that if we're mind melding here this morning, Ken, that might be the only way, and I don't think you or I, either one, want that.
Yeah, man. But the reality is, a lot of this stuff is on purpose. You see, if you keep the people divided among themselves, then they can't unite against the government that's keep holding them in bondage. And then when you think about it, we're really in bondage. All of the taxes and all of that stuff like that, like the realty companies, they got the lobbyists. They go boom. I saw another report. The guy was like, if you look at from the 50s up until about 1983, a person could live the American dream, go to school, get the education, get the good job, and be able to have a house, right? And they spoke about the percentage of Americans that owned homes and so on and such like that. Now, a house that may have cost you $50,000 back then is like $200,000 to $300,000 now. But you have all this debt to live with, right? You get out of college, you got your student debt, right? You still have to pay taxes, right? If you have a car note, if you do get the house, you got the mortgage. So it's like the whole thing is set up to keep you in debt. But then the individuals who set the system up in the first place, they tell you, well, it's not us. Look at those people. They did that. They took your job, right? Or look at these people. It's because they're doing this. They're lazy. And there's always an excuse, but the excuse always involves another party. And people who can't think outside the box accept that excuse as reality. And so now instead of looking at the government that created the system, they look at the individuals that the government pointed at and said were the problem. And that helps government because it makes people believe the government has the solution to the problem, even though they created the problem in the first place, right? So it's a lot of shell game stuff going on, man. Look over here while I put this over there.
It's
right?
3-card Monty, my friend. That's all it is. Yeah. Nick says, how do we band together? They have us infighting so much, uniting under the United USA. Let's see here. Sorry. I just had a new comment come in. Banner, more important than ever, we are in a silent depression, as Shadow stated, needs to be turned around. Pray it's not too late. Will Parker says, Rich, you said the key word republic. We are a republic. When America finally experiences that epiphany that we are a republic, we may be able to save it and keep it. And, Ben Franklin was coming out of the convention and somebody rushed up to him and says, Dr. Franklin, what kind of government do we have? I mean, they didn't even know, the people, back in the founding of this country, because you have a republic if you can keep it. because we're not a democracy, a pure democracy. And that has only happened over the last probably 100 years to make Americans think you're a democracy, because a democracy, in my opinion, is the tyranny of the majority. And whatever the majority says trumps everything. And I just don't agree with that. We're a republic. Thank God for that. A nation of laws. And I want to get to a couple of your comments here, because when I asked you what worries you the most, and I love your answer, I want to, for those that may have missed it, thank you to the 17 watching Ken and I live. You said it's all of them, because they're all interconnected. This is a multi-variable problem, right? It ain't the problem with China does not agree in isolation, because China holds American bonds, billions of dollars in American bonds. So they're interlinked to us. You know, the thing going on in Europe with Putin invading Ukraine didn't happen in isolation. There was reasons for that. So the idea that you can say, well, this one thing or that one thing, it's all of it at once. And that's what's so freaking bad, man. It's, if it was just one thing, we could handle it. If it was two things, but when you put them all together and link them together, man.
It's just, like I said, a bad situation, man, all around the board. It's a bad situation all around the board.
Yeah, Dr. Fuller says it's the other guy and that group who made your problems. Elect me and I will save you from their evil actions. And I regardless of what people think about Reagan, man, I love when he said, you know, government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem. And the idea that, another thing I like is, or Craig is in England there, you know, the sovereign power, and don't correct me if I'm wrong, it emanates from King Charles and flows down through the parliament and things of this nature. I think you guys have a constitutional monarchy, but I could be wrong. Here, our sovereignty is the people, which I think might be unique in all the world. And I think that's our strength, man.
Well, it's supposed to be the people, right?
Yep.
But we keep getting undercut. Like I said, it's a division game, right? If you can put people against each other, in Machiavelli, the Prince, he kind of speaks on that when he talks about principalities and how to run them, right? If you take over a princedom and you take out the ruling faction of the princedom, and instead of bringing in a whole different body, you elevate. What's the word I'm looking for? A different word here. You promote individuals already from that social structure and put them in power over the people. The people will be resentful of those individuals, right? So that person has to depend on the conqueror to help them maintain their power, right? And that's pretty much what happens here from a certain perspective. You take individuals and you put them in a position of power, then you make them believe that the people beneath them don't care about them, right? And you make the people beneath them believe that the person above them doesn't care about them. So now the two factions are against each other. And you make the person up here believe, yo, it's in your best interest to do what I'm telling you. Otherwise, these people are going to vote you out of office, right? But if you do what we are saying, you can maintain your position of power. You can get rich, because, you know, most people who go into politics in Washington don't go in there millionaires, but all of them leave millionaires. Right.
That's right.
So it's like I said, man, like you said, it's 3-card Monty. It's a shell game. That's all.
Yeah, dude. So here, check this out, Ken. I don't know if this happened to you yet, but I think it was yesterday. I got a call from day before yesterday. I got a call from my bank, and it's like, hey, as a beneficial owner, I need to update your information. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they kept using this idea, this name, beneficial owner. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll get there and whatever. So I go to the bank, I get them taken care of. But then my son-in-law, who owns a business, he goes, hey, Rich, have you heard about this new thing? And he hands it to me because my accountant gave it to me. And we have to register our businesses with the government, because we register them with the state, right? As a limited liability corporation with the state of Tennessee. But now we got to tell Big Daddy federal government about our business. And I'm like, what is this about? And right up front, it says, well, they're trying to, the government, this Biden administration, is trying to do something about shell companies and hiding money. I'm like, whoa, bro, that's what you and your family did. Your Hunter, your freaking brother have 23 companies that provide no goods and no services. They just 3-card the money around. And I'm not trying to make this political. If you happen to love Biden, good for you. God bless you. I'm just telling you the facts. We've had Hunter Biden's laptop now for years. Has he been charged with any of the crimes that are in there, Ken?
Nah.
Nope. And some of them were gun charges, man. Read the book, The Laptop from Hell, to get an idea of what the family is up to. And again, as the Republicans, it's somebody said it the other day, whether you think of the Democrats or Republicans, it's two wings on the same bird. You know what I'm saying?
I agree 110%.
You know what I'm saying? Don't think one is better than another, man, because why have they not brought up articles of impeachment over what we know that they've been up to? Tony says, we are now an administrative oligarchy. The executive branch has become the judge, jury, and executioner. Ooh, that's scary. But you got to wonder, man, when you see a president comes into office and it's day one, he just signs a bunch of executive orders circumventing the way laws are supposed to be done and completely erases the last president and everything that he got passed. Tell me that doesn't sound like an administrative oligarchy to you, Ken.
Hell yeah, man. Listen, God, yeah, I'm gonna just say I agree with you.
Yeah, see, that's what I like about you, Ken. You got decorum. One final thing you talked about, man, because you're talking about veterans, and I'm sure you may have seen something on the news about military recruitment levels being low, right?
Yeah.
Well, the levels have not been this low since before World War II. So are we ready to fight a two-theater war with the forces that we have now? No, I mean, we're in bad shape. And I will tell you that when you have a government that walks around that tells Americans that our country has done all these evils, we're really a force. We're not a force for good. We've done all this bad stuff. We continue to do bad stuff. But oh, by the way, join and help us project power around the world. It's you're speaking out of the two-faced kind of stuff there.
Well, I saw like a week ago, there was a thing about obesity rates in the military. It's like at 30%, and they said that's unheard of. It's never been that high. So there's that. And then another thing where they're accepting individuals. You don't need to have a GED. And I can't say whether this is true or not. It's just something I saw. Right. But you no longer need to have a GED or high school diploma. If you can pass the test, right, yep, you can get in. So now I know that you're a Marine. I have quite a few good friends who were Marines at one point, and they told me that on the entry test, Marines required the highest level score, right? It's like Marines required the highest level for everything. But now, could you imagine? The point of saying that is intelligence, right? There was a degree of intelligence that was incumbent upon an individual to have to join the military. But if you're saying that you don't need to be an intelligent individual, right, to enter the military, that's a recipe for disaster right there. Like if things get that desperate that just anybody can join, right? Now what happens is discipline and intelligence kind of go hand in hand, right? Because you need to be able to understand what the requirements of discipline are in order to be disciplined, right? Boom. So now if you have individuals who can't understand that basic thing, and then you send them to another country and you expect them to act a particular way, and they don't, you knew beforehand that was going to be the case because they didn't have the level of intelligence necessary to understand the disciplinary requirements of the job, right? I remember some years back, this was when the Afghan war was still going on, and they were talking about how there was a picture of a Marine. He had a dude detained, and they were saying this badass Marine detained this dude without killing him or whatever the case. Boom, showing the level of discipline, right? Yep. The guy probably had just shot at him or whatever happened to require him to be detained, but the Marine understood the rules of engagement, and once the individual was no longer a threat, took him in the country, right? Yep. What happens when the individual can't make that judgment call like that, right? He doesn't understand that these are the rules of engagement. And once these things happen, right, if these boxes are checked, you can't shoot this dude. They're like, man, screw this. Bang, I shot him. He took a shot at me or whatever. I'm going to clip his wings. That's a bad situation, man.
I agree. And, what's funny, man, is the Marines kind of General Krulak, back in the 90s, when he was the commandant of the Marine Corps, he come up with this idea that he saw the wars of the future, the 21st century warfare, was going to be more of what he called the 3-block war concept. Are you familiar with this, Ken?
No.
So I think you'll appreciate this because it's exactly what you just said. It's the moral complexity of a 3-block war, wherein on the first block, you're doing peacekeeping missions. You know, you're handing out soccer balls to kids and candy and lollipops, whatever. I mean, you're handing out blankets and shit. You're taking care of people, right? Then you got block number 2. 15 minutes later, your squad gets a mission to come to the second block where you're dividing warring factions like we did in Somalia, like we did in Bosnia and all these other places. You don't want to shoot anybody, but they might be shooting at you or they might be shooting at each other. It takes a moral, it's a complex moral environment, right? Where it's a thinking man's game. Then you go to the third block. It's open urban warfare, right? You're shooting at them, they're shooting at you. It's all kinetic. You're shooting missiles and shit. And then at the end of the day, you get tasked to come right back to the first block and hand out soccer balls again. Now, you can't do that shit if you're a dummy. And that's your point. It takes a strong mental and moral aptitude to face that fight. And when we start dumbing down the standards, man, you said it best, man. We're just not ready.
Yeah, that's it, man. It's a recipe for disaster, right? People start. So I tell people, like, I used to work in retail sales, and one of the things I would, because like I kind of was really good at it. One of the things I would get to tell people to buy stuff is, first impression is the best impression, and the first impression people get of you is what they see, right? So you want to present your best face whenever you're dressing or whatever the case. It's the same thing on a global scale with regards to, politics or whatever. We want to put our best foot forward, right? When things happen overseas, the military represents the face of America, right? So we have to put our best foot forward. If they do something crazy, people don't say the military did it. They say the Americans did it, right? So it puts a black eye on everybody, not just the individual, right? It's like that with any organization. Any organization, if one person in an organization does something, the organization gets blamed, right? You may never even hear the person's name. And when we look at it, the country is an organization, or at least it's supposed to be United States, organization of states, right? Mm-hmm. And when we go somewhere else and something happens and an individual fouls out, then America fouled out. It wasn't the individual that fouled out. It was America that fouled out, right? And that's not good because we are already looked at. I mean, if we're honest, we have a bad light cast on the country, right? For whatever reasons, right? And that doesn't help. What we should be doing now is trying to reverse that, right? And have people look at us in a better light than they're looking at us now. We, be the good guy, the guy in the white hat or whatever the case. But if you dumb down the standards of the military and you send people who can't make those, moral judgments properly, that's just it's gonna get worse.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why at every single embassy around the world, American embassy around the world, there's something called Post 1. And Post 1 at the embassy is like the forward-facing look of the embassy, and it's in Marine and dress blues. It's a Marine security guard. There's a detachment of Marines at every single embassy, and they wear dress blues for a reason, because we want to put our best face forward. And these guys are highly trained, highly skilled, and they're at every American embassy and that's the way I looked at it, man. When I was a recruiter for the Marine Corps, I looked at like I'm an ambassador for the Marines. And this small community that I'm in here in rural Tennessee, they may never see another Marine, but when they see me, I'm going to leave them with an impression they may not join the Marine Corps, but they're at least like, hey, that guy was squared away. He was honest and fair with me. You know what I mean?
Yes, I can dig that. Let me tell you a funny story, right? So when I was a kid, I was a little bit of a problem. Right? So
what?
So I had this one teacher. She said, "You know what? My husband's a Marine," because I was like, "I'm not afraid of anybody," right? So she's like, "My husband's a Marine. I'm gonna have him come up here." And the dude made such an impression on me that after that, I had like an affinity. I was like, yo, I was like, I'm gonna grow up, I'm gonna be a Marine. I want to be like that guy, right? And we talked about I was in elementary school, man. I might have been in 4th grade when this incident happened, but he made such an impression on me that I've always remembered Marines like, yo, that's the guy I want to be. I want to be this guy, right? So, but it goes into what you said about being an ambassador. It wasn't, he's like, I got a brother of mine. He says, yo, once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine, right? You never, there's no, I used to be a Marine or I was a Marine, you're always a Marine. And you see that a lot of dudes who are Marines carry themselves like that. They're always like, yo, I have to represent the Corps properly, even if I'm not in uniform anymore, even if I'm not in the actual Corps, I still have to represent that. That energy right there, that vibe is what I'm talking about. That has to be the vibe. When we conduct ourselves as Americans, it should be wherever I go, I'm an American and I have to represent America properly, right? Boom. I don't want to come off as obnoxious, arrogant, whatever. I want to come off, because there's a difference. A lot of people confuse arrogance with confidence, right? There's a big difference between the two, right? We should always come off as confident, not necessarily arrogant, right? People don't like arrogance, but they admire confidence. So when representing America, we should come off as confident and competent, right?
Yes.
So that people see like, wow, okay, cool. They have good impressions of what Americans are like. And this, if every individual does this, it begins to change the way people view America as a whole, right? Based on the individuals. You dig what I'm saying? So because if we think the country is just a group of individuals, and that's what it is. So we have to do that, right? But we have to change that.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. When we were overseas, we kind of joke around ourselves like, like I'm just going to go cut in line because I'm an American. I can, these laws don't apply to me. It's a joke, but because so many people do that. I mean, hell, there's a book from the 50s. I don't know if you read it, Ken, called The Ugly American. Yeah. And it's written by some former State Department officials. They wrote it under a pseudonym so nobody would find out who they were. But they talk about these little vignettes in the book where they talk about terrible things where they've seen Americans go into a country that say doesn't eat pork and all they eat is hot dogs and kind of rub it in everybody's face. And it just really talks about how the mistakes we've made in the past, alienating ourselves as a culture, because, like you said, people don't like the bullies, and they don't. Tracy says, great conversation, guys. Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you for being on, Tracy. Gerald says, I was once asked if I was a retired Marine. I, of course, said no. It was a great compliment, though. Well, thank you. Let's see here. Ken, I've kept you on here well over an hour, my friend, and I want to respect your time, and hopefully we'll get you on for round 3, man. But how do we prepare? And this is maybe where we kind of ease back into the self-defense community. How do we prepare for all the myriad of threats that you and I have discussed this morning?
So the first, I think, is learning to be aware, right? Awareness is, so I look at self-defense as being a 3-tiered thing, right? The first tier, the defensive part of it, is awareness, right? There's the defensive part, the protection part, and then if you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's and something still happens, there's the anti-abduction and counter custody part, right? So starting with the defensive portion of it, right? Your awareness, it has to be like your castle wall. If you think of your body like a castle, awareness is the wall that defends that castle. You should be aware of whatever is going on around you, right? And being aware. So I usually break the awareness into 3 parts, right? They're 3/3 of one whole, right? There's awareness of ourselves in relation to the people around us, awareness of ourselves in relation to the objects around us, and awareness of the people and objects around us in relation to each other, right? Proximity breeds opportunity. So the closer someone is to you, you should be paying attention to how close this person is, how they're standing, because the way they're standing will dictate tactics, right? And what objects may be close to them that they can use as a weapon against you, and what you can use as a weapon against yourself. And a weapon doesn't necessarily have to be something you can pick up, right? It can be an obstructing thing, right? Like I have something I call it OQ, which is objects of opportunity. And one of the objects are obstructing objects, right? So if I can get a table between me and this person, like if I was a small woman and some guy was trying to grab me and I could get a car between us, right? I have time to call for help or index a self-protection tool or whatever the case, right? But being aware, all of that starts with awareness. So awareness has to be the first line of defense, right? And if your defense works, it's just like, again, with the castle. If a castle's walls hold up, the military doesn't really have to engage. The army, the castle defenses don't really have to engage with the invading army, right? If they get past that, right, Then you go to the next stage. And just like with the wall, if the wall is there, as they're trying to breach the wall, it gives opportunity for the militia behind the wall to prepare to repel the invader, right? Boom. If I have my awareness up, I see the potential for threat. It gives me an opportunity to prepare mentally and physically if I have to index something or create a certain environment to prepare to repel that invasion, right? So these are the things. So it has to start with awareness first, and then that preparation for the physical encounter. And you can't be prepared for the physical encounter if you don't train. Training is huge, right? I saw a quote that said, "You don't rise to the level of your expectation; you fall to your training." Right?
True.
And you have to train, so that what you're doing becomes a reflexive thing, right? If you have to constantly think about what it is you want to do, you're never going to win. Because if you have to think about what you're doing, and I can just react to or respond to whatever it is you're trying to do, you're always going to be a couple steps behind me, right? So you need to be able to respond just as quickly as I can, right? Or faster if possible. So, you have to train, and even your awareness, you have to train your awareness, right? So those are the two big things right there. And then the last would be learning, even the basics of anti-abduction, right? Again, this comes down to awareness, but being aware of what things are available to you, how to get out of zip cuffs, or first being aware of the fact that when you get snatched, in between that, when you initial taking in the second location, right, is your best chance of saving yourself, right? Because it's usually when they first grab you, it's usually going to be a rush job, right? Because they're trying to get you in the vehicle and away before anybody notices. So they don't have time to properly secure your hands or whatever else, right? You have to be aware of what options you have in that situation, right? If there's zip ties, if there's cuffs, how do you get out of cuffs? How do you get out of zip ties? You should have things on your person that you could use for those eventualities, right? Boom. How do you open up a car trunk from the inside? How do you all of these things? Again, come back to it. You have to be aware of, right? And what to do in these circumstances and in these situations. Again, all of this is, thirds of one whole, and this whole is the root of self-protection.
Mhm.
And with the way that things are going now, you need these things in order to keep yourself safe. And the individuals who know these things have a responsibility to make sure they teach this, right?
Unless
Because
the government outlaws it. In that case, we're all going to go underground with teaching it because I'm not going to stop.
yeah, that's the truth. I agree with you on that too, brother.
I've got some comments coming in. Dr. Fuller says, I was asked once if I was a Marine. I said, no, my parents were married. Nick says, training saves lives. Tony says, the Army and Marines had one thing in common. They both wanted to be Marines. Jonathan Deal, good morning, sir. Jonathan Deal runs a training company in South Africa. Good morning, Jonathan. He says, the standards can be rebuilt if good people will stand up, take a stand, and defend a principle. Absolutely, sir. Craig says we say the same thing about police. Good friend Jay Fujimoto is on. Good morning, Jay.
What's up, Jay?
Yeah. Dr. Fuller says start teaching kinetic dancing classes, Rich. Yeah, we may have to call it that. I want to get to some of your comments, Ken, because I love what you're talking about. You were talking about, and I wrote it down here, proximity breeds opportunity. Man, is that not true?
Yeah, that's right.
And I think we delude ourselves with this idea that I'm not going to let anybody get in contact with me. That's bullshit. Walk down the street of any urban sidewalk, you're going to be in close contact with people. But you have to understand that there's an opportunity for you there, and that close proximity, there's an opportunity for them. Rory Miller has a class where he says, "Is anybody here not let anybody get close to him in the seminar?" And somebody will inevitably raise their hand, like, "Yeah, I don't let people get close to me." He's like, "Okay, cool." And your name is Kenneth. Okay, Kenneth, cool. And about an hour, 2 hours into the seminar, he'll be like, "Kenneth, do me a favor, hop up here, buddy, and stand right here." And the guy stands right next to him. He's talking, then he dumps the guy on his ass. Not to embarrass him, but just to make the point that we're all in close proximity, man. Don't kid yourself. So there is an opportunity for a bad actor to do something to you because of that. And I will tell you this, man, and I want to get your opinion on this, Ken. And thinking back to prison, or thinking back to when you're growing up in Brooklyn, or thinking about where you live now in upstate New York. But as a principle, I believe that if somebody does not respect your personal space, they don't respect you. What do you think?
I agree with that 110%. So this goes into the previous conversation we had, right? You're always being tested, right? So an individual may get close to you just to see how you respond or how you react to them being in that close to you, right? Like you said, we're always in close proximity. You'll see it a lot of times in New York City, particularly on the subway, right? That's probably one of the most condensed spaces you can be in, right? Because it's always packed during rush hour. And even with people packed this tightly, if you brush against somebody, they'll stop whatever they're doing and look at you like, you're just a little bit too close. So even in that, there's an understanding that there should be some room separating us, right? If you allow me to bump into you here, right, and you don't say anything, right, it's like, all right, cool. Then I can go in your pocket. Or if I can bump you like this and either you don't notice or you don't say anything, the next time I bump, you might feel a knife against your kidney or something. I'm like, listen, don't make a scene, right? Just give me this or whatever the case. Boom, 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 right? People have to understand this, right? So when people are getting close to you, as somebody's approaching, you should be paying attention to their hands. You should be paying attention to, like, do they have any bulges in their pockets or anything like that? And again, position, right? Because if it's like if you and I are standing in we were in a bar, right? And we were having a disagreement about something. And I took a step back, a small step back with my right foot. You would understand that, all right, this dude just set himself up for a punch, right? That goes over a lot of people's heads, right? See, my position, and it tells you, all right, because of the way he's standing, these are the attacks that would make the most sense for him to try, right? Either he's going to try to hit me with this punch or this kick or grab this or whatever, boom, boom, boom. You need to be able to evaluate that in your mind quickly, right? So that way you have an appropriate response, because reaction and response, two different things. I don't really want to be in a situation where I'm reacting, right? Because the reaction is instinctive, right? That's just somebody oh my God, that's a reaction, right? It didn't help, right? Maybe I didn't get hit in the face, but his intent could have been to just get my arms up like this because now I can't see and he can do something else. Response is trained, right? It has some thought behind it. It has a purpose. It has a function. So now the thing comes up in my face and I parry it. I can still see what's going on, right? I'm responding. It's like a conversation, right? When two people debate, if I can get you reacting to what I'm saying, I'm going to win that debate because you're reacting out of emotion. But if you respond to what I'm saying, it means you had an intelligent thought process behind what you're saying. And I always tell people that fighting is essentially a philosophical debate. Everybody has a philosophy on what's the best way to fight, right? Everybody who's been in a fight. And when you and I fight, we're trying to see who has the better philosophy. So it's a philosophical debate made physical, right? And whoever is more eloquent and articulate in the expression of violence is going to be the one who wins that debate. So if I'm reacting to what you do, I'm probably going to lose the debate because my reactions are coming out of emotion, right? As opposed to responding to what you do, right? Now there's some thought behind it. There's intelligence behind it. Everything has a purpose, right? I do this to set this up and this, as opposed to me doing this and then hoping I can do something else after that, right? It's like in the Art of War when Sun Tzu says, superior warriors of old first won the battle at headquarters and then went out to fight it, where inferior warriors of old went out to fight the battle and then tried to win it, right? That's training, right? I want to win the battle in practice first, right? I want to practice, so that way I know how to respond, as opposed to getting in a situation and then hoping I know how to respond.
I want to touch on that because I think this is, again, Ken, our administration doesn't understand, like you said, the principles of the art of war, Sun Tzu or any of that. And that is, we'll just go to war. Like, what does victory look like? You know, you gotta know what your strategic end state is before you ever go kinetic. And they don't even understand that, that there's no strategic vision. It's just like, well, we're going to go to the war. And when I see that lack of a vision and that lack of a follow through and that lack of a plan, it makes me wonder, like, are we just trying to enrich the defense contractors? I mean, again, no tinfoil hat on this pretty head this morning, but it makes you wonder. I want to go to when you, and I hope we haven't gone too long, Ken. I've got 2 more questions for you. When you look at someone, right, and that's in close proximity to you, are you looking, is there a way that you sweep their body? How are you evaluating them when you're in the awareness and avoidance cycle?
So first thing I do is I look at the eyes, right, to see if there's a sense of recognition. If you've been marked as a target by somebody, even like they may not know you, but they know you, right? They know that you're the person they mark. So when you make eye contact and you see that they realize, all right, yeah, that's him. So I look for that first. I'm looking for that recognition in the eyes. From there, I'm looking at posture, right? And it's just like if you look at the animal kingdom, before a tiger strikes or a lion strikes or whatever, there's a certain posture in their body language. People are the same way, right? Predators are predators, no matter whether it's the concrete jungle or the foliage jungle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Predators are predators. So I'm looking for posture. And then from posture, I'm looking at, like I said, I'm looking for bulges, the way the feet are positioned, so on and such, right? And that gives me a good read on what the situation may or may not be, right? So I'll give you an actually working example. This just happened yesterday, right? Me and my lady were at the Dollar Tree or Dollar General or something, and a guy, we were walking up an aisle, and I saw the guy, and I made eye contact with him, and he put his hand up. So at first, I'm like, all right, cool, this is something, right? But then I like paid attention to the woman that was with him, and I was like, oh, so he was a special needs guy, right? So he was just being friendly. But initially, it looked like it could have been something. So I prepped myself for what could have happened but again, paying attention to body language. I read his, then I read her body language, and that told me all I needed to know. Boom, gave him a high five and kept it pushing, right? Now, if I had been a reactionary individual, that could have went a whole other way. See, I gave a response. I responded to the information that was given as opposed to reacting to the information and doing something foolish, right? So that's the whole thing, man. Being able to recognize there are always subtle cues. And the more that you train to identify these cues, the quicker you can pick up on them, right? You know, I had the unfortunate benefit of growing up in an environment where, you know, my life really depended upon my ability to process that information quickly. So now I try to share that and teach it to other people because it's beneficial.
Yeah, truth. Will Parker says 55% of human communication is through facial expression and body language. And when I teach people how to teach firearms, as Will Parker knows, I've got several little tricks I do to prove this point. Final question I have for you this morning, Ken, and is what is your EDC? What's your everyday carry when Ken Shadow Goodman goes out with his lady to Dollar General or wherever you go? Ken, what are you carrying with you, brother?
I usually carry a folder, a fixed blade, a mark, and a flashlight. Those are things I always have on me, right? Oh, and my escape tools, just in case something, you know, I might get thrown in the trunk, right? So, but those are things I always have on me. The mark is this thing right here. I think I might have showed you before, but I use this.
Oh yeah.
This is my fixed blade I like to carry, right?
Nice.
And then I have a folder. Usually it'll be a dart, the Fox Blade dart. I like that a lot. So and then from there it's just, you know, and this my change purse, right? You gotta have your change purse with you, right?
Yeah, we used that. One of our sponsors used to be oh God, what's that? Core Performance, I believe it was, and they had a change purse just like that. That was pretty cool. And what's interesting about those change purses is you can take them on an airplane.
Yeah.
If they don't look scary, and this one I think was like you could get them in different colors, like purple or khaki or whatever. And I've got one around here somewhere. But yeah, man, those can turn the tide, definitely.
Yeah, man. So
So Ken, thank you for being on here. An hour and 30 minutes, my friend. Where can folks that want to train with you, where can they train with you and interact with you? Now, before you answer that, I have links to your Facebook page. I got links to your website and all that other kind of stuff in today's show notes. So you may want to direct them there or somewhere else, Ken.
yeah, that would be the easiest way to get in touch with me, right? I do a lot of classes online. I'm available for seminars, right? I do online classes and private classes here at the house, or if you're not too far away from me, I don't mind traveling to do private classes either, right? So if you want to get in touch with me about any of that, you can hit me either on Instagram Messenger, Facebook Messenger, or email me directly.
Yeah, a lot of comments coming in. Thank you, gentlemen. It says, appreciate Ken's videos. Yeah, I really, this is the second chat I've had to have with you, man. And I think we need to make these a pretty regular occurrence because I really love it, man.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Well, guys and gals out there in Warrior Nation, remember, folks, the fight is coming. Please be ready.